welcome to another episode of Taco and Tech. I am your host, Jeff Brunson, and what are we going to talk about today? We are tacoing the Maui Invitational. I've got Emory and Ryan here, and we're going to discuss just Texas Tech, the field in general, and then just kind of any expectations. And so, not that these guys need any introduction, but go ahead and Emory, if you would start, just kind of introduce yourself and tell where the people where they can follow you or see you or whatever you need to know.
Yeah, so my name's Emory Lyda. Obviously, I covered Texas Tech for Guns Up Nation. Just started that this past week. Follow them on Twitter at Guns Up Nation, called The Nation. I've been covering Texas Tech for a number of years, whether it be with Fever the Matadors originally, then went to No Middle Madness with Ryan, then rocked on Texas Tech, and recently been working some on the No Middle Madness project as well as The Nation. You can follow me on Twitter at EmoryLyda41. If Twitter still exists when this is posted, I have no idea if that's going to be the case or not, but if it is, I'll be posting film threads, random tech takes, some good, some bad, and then obviously I got to throw in my UNC takes occasionally.
There you go. All right, Ryan, Freed, Mainville.
Yeah, that's right. I'm Ryan Mainville. You can follow me on Twitter now at Ryan Mainville. Now that I am freed, I'm over at the Gambling Gauchos. I don't really even know what my title is there. I just make content, hop on podcasts. It's a ton of fun. You should follow the Gambling Gauchos on Twitter and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Got some great content coming in there soon. I also cover Texas Tech for the Dallas Morning News, and it's good to be on this podcast with you, Jeff, and with Emory. I mean, Emory and I went from recording a podcast every day for about 6 months and at least once a week for about a year and a half. And, Emory and I are friends. And so that's kind of what the nucleus of our work together was, hey, we're friends. Let's talk basketball on a podcast. And now we kind of get to just be friends and talk basketball like the old days, but it's good to get behind a mic with him again. It's been too long and I missed hanging out.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I gotta say, it's been a little bit different this year. Like the first 3 games, texting, interacting with tweets and whatever, not having to hop behind the mic and give our hot takes for 30 minutes. But no, I mean, I'm really excited to be back with Ryan and back doing this again.
Yeah, when I had this idea, I thought, that'd be kind of fun to get you guys back together. And so I messaged you individually. I didn't tell you my ultimate plan. And so, and of course, once you both accepted, I didn't want any pressure. I wanted you to accept on your own. But then once, you did, I was like, oh, hey, by the way, we got a partner coming along as well. So, but I'm here and I got my Hawaiian shirt on. I got my Maui Jims. I love my Maui Jims. And so I definitely had to wear them. It's amazing that, Maui looks just like a room in my house, here as we prepare for the tournament. So I guess I kind of mentioned this, in the messages, should I keep the Maui Jims on throughout the podcast or should I take them off? What's the vote here?
Yeah, got to keep them on.
Keep them on?
For sure. I'm rocking.
Oh, okay. 2-1. Of course, if I had to vote, I'd probably say keep them on as well. These are the same glasses I have in my profile pic. I love my Maui Jims. Big supporter. They did not pay for that. They have no idea who I am, but Maui Jims for life. So here we go. Let's just start out with the Maui Invitational field itself, just the field as a whole. Kind of your thoughts on Texas Tech being a part of it. Who's involved, I guess the class of the field, or however it is that you want to answer that question. Just your kind of thoughts of what's in front of Tech in this tournament.
Well, I think first off, you have to say this is a much better tournament. And I know Tech played a lot of good teams last year in non-con between Gonzaga, Tennessee, Providence. But it's a better tournament than the South Padre Island tournament that would technically fulfilled Tech's obligations last year. But this year, I mean, Maui, I would say coming into the season, you maybe expected a little bit more from the teams in the tournament. Certainly, you have Creighton, you have Arkansas. Those are going to be two teams that are in the front of the national conversation, both on Tech's side of the bracket. Louisville has had a really, really, really difficult start to the season. But then on the other side, you've got teams like a Cincinnati, like a San Diego State, San Diego State in particular. Like there's a lot of good defensive teams in this tournament, and a lot of teams that are kind of on the upbring or on the uprise over the last few years. Maybe not the pure blue bloods that you would expect occasionally from a Maui field, and certainly looking at the battle for Atlantis next year, the Tech is slated to be a part of, but a lot of good teams with good coaches. And man, I mean, I'm excited to see this one play out because there's a lot of different styles of basketball. You've got like the Mark Adams style of defense. You've got Greg McDermott's team at Creighton and all of the innovative offensive stuff they've done over the years. I mean, this is going to be really fun X's and O's basketball.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, it's been a couple of years really since Texas Tech has been in an early season tournament of this caliber. I mean, the field is really strong. I think both sides of the bracket pose a really interesting slate of basketball games. And I'm going to enjoy this tournament just as a college basketball fan because there's just so many good teams, so many different teams. I think Tech has got a really difficult open to the tournament, and we'll obviously talk about Creighton in this game, but it's just going to be a good early season test to maybe have some of your flaws from the first couple of games, have those exposed against higher competition, and then maybe truly test your strengths, make sure that you're at the caliber that you want to be playing at on offense. And so it's a good test, but I'm just really excited to watch some really good basketball games.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a barometer, kind of where is Tech going to stand, and several of these teams, and really for all these teams, or at least most of them, they haven't played anybody yet, generally speaking. So it's a good test for really everybody. Creighton's played some, cupcakes, what you want to call it. I don't know that Arkansas has played anybody either. I haven't looked at every schedule, obviously. That's a lot of teams, but just this early in the season, it's a nice where does Texas Tech stand right now? Obviously, it's not the goal, to win this tournament. The goal is to win, the NCAA tournament at the end. But where do we stand right now, right? And so, you know what, I'm going to divert just a little bit. We have Akeem asked a question on Twitter. And so he said, of the 7 other teams in Maui, who would Tech match up the best or worst against?
Well, I think first off, I'll say the best against, and I feel like this is a little bit of a cop out, but I'm not high at all on Louisville this season. I think that the early season struggles are completely predictable. They don't have a lot of talent on that roster. I mean, L. Ellis is their guard, and he was someone that Tech kind of looked at a couple of years ago as a recruit. And I just think like their guards are not good at all with the ball, and that kind of plays into sort of a lot of their offensive deficiencies. And then I mean, just in general, I think that team kind of stands out as sort of the outlier among this field in terms of really quality teams. But then, and I'd also say Cincinnati maybe as well falls into that category a bit. But then on the flip side, I mean, you have to say Arkansas might have the best pure talent defensively in the country. And obviously, we don't know everything in terms of if Nick Smith is going to play or not, and kind of what his status is. They've been really cautious bringing him along this season, but certainly, I mean, if he comes in, that's a game changer. You've already brought in Ricky Council from Wichita State. They've got so many wings on there, whether it be guys like Jordan Walsh, Micaiah Mitchell. I mean, then you bring in guards like Devontae Davis. Like Arkansas has so much raw talent on that roster, so much defensive length, and it's interesting because they're really a lot like Tech was last year in terms of the switchability. But then the flip side of it is they also have the potential to bring in arguably the best freshman guard in the nation in Nick Smith, and you bring that in, and that team is really dangerous. So I'd say they're the toughest matchup. But early on in the season, I mean, you could say a number of those teams. I mean, San Diego State has a really good defense. Creighton's offense is going to be scary. Like, I think any of those 3 would be a good answer, and maybe even Arizona as well.
Yeah, I mean, if there wasn't just one absolute dud in this tournament, it would be a lot more difficult for either of us to pick our best matchup. And I think that's definitely Louisville at this point, which, I mean, essentially, if you look at the bracket, it bodes well for Texas Tech, because if Texas Tech does get bounced in the first round against Creighton and Louisville gets bounced as well against Arkansas, then you've got a pretty easy win on your hands that you need to take care of business with. But Worst matchup. I'm in complete agreement with Emory and Arkansas. I was actually going to make an anecdote about the fact that this Arkansas team looks a lot defensively like the build of last year's team. And I think a lot of Texas Tech fans will recognize that when they watch this team. It's just a ton of Adonis Arms type built guys that can do a little bit of everything with the basketball. And that's not really a strength of this Texas Tech basketball team. It definitely was last year. And so that team has a lot of talent. But for differentiation's sake, I will go with Creighton just because I think the matchup down low is really hard with Kalkbrenner. And then, man, Ryan Nimhard is just having an unreal season. And so I think that Creighton matchup first round, you're going to get tested in one of the most difficult environments that the tournament's going to offer.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'll throw in, Tech definitely got the tougher side of the bracket, kind of a tough draw with, Arkansas and Creighton on the same side. As far as best, I would probably add Cincinnati, kind of in Louisville, not just to add a different team. Obviously Louisville is the answer, but I would say Cincinnati. They've had kind of while their name probably still, and Louisville does too. Their name still has some history to it. Just their current teams are not up to their, I guess the standard of the history, so to speak. So let me add that. But definitely, Arkansas, Creighton. I think both of those are going to be tough matchups for Tech. If Tech does get past Creighton, and then assuming Arkansas wins, I think Tech has a chance, right? Because number one, you've got, I think the advantage Tech has is that Arkansas would really have less than 24 hours to prepare. I'm sure they've already scattered us. That's not what I'm saying, but to install the game plan, specifically, I think there is some benefit there. Of course, Tech's in the same boat, right? In the same opposite deal. So I don't know that it's a huge advantage. I'm just saying there's a chance that Tech is there to have opportunity to win is what I'm trying to say. So, okay. So the other side of the bracket here. So we've got Arizona, Cincinnati, Ohio State, and San Diego State. Not that we need, a deep exhaustive analysis of each team, but maybe some quick thoughts, maybe as and we've kind of mentioned some, but who is your pick to come out of that bracket?
I really think it's San Diego State. And maybe I'm being a little bit overly optimistic on that defense, but last year in the Mountain West, they completely shut down a lot of good teams. I mean, you had Colorado State, you had Utah State. I mean, Ryan and I were big Justin Bean fanatics over the last year, and they completely had a really good season against guys like that and like Utah State. And I mean, this San Diego State team has a lot of talent, a lot of versatility. Again, similar to Arkansas defensively, I think they're maybe not quite as switchable. You have some smaller guards, but I mean, this team with San Diego State, they've started out the season shooting the ball well. They already have a dominant win over Stanford in the non-conference. And I think Arizona is going to be a really good challenge on that side of the bracket. I mean, but at the same time, you also have them losing Benedict Mathurin. You have them losing Christian Koloko. You have them losing enough talent from last year. I think San Diego State, who returned a lot of their core, would probably be my pick from the bracket. I think that it's going to be some good games, though, because also, again, kind of like the first side, you have two teams that I would consider to be maybe not national championship contenders right away, but certainly Final Four caliber teams in Arizona and San Diego State. And then you have Ohio State, which may be a little bit further back, and then Cincinnati kind of being sort of the obvious weak link in that group. But for me, I think I have to go with the experience of San Diego State to win that side of the bracket.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas is obviously the highest ranked KenPom team in this tournament. They're at 13th, but then San Diego State is right there at 17th. I mean, this is a really good San Diego State team that I think a lot of people overlook just because of the conference that they're situated in and just brand recognition. But this is a team that's playing phenomenal defense this year. It's really, really good defense to watch. And so I really feel good about San Diego State making out of that burner of a start. But I mean, Ohio State would actually probably be my second pick. I like their offense this year. They're not really built well on the defensive end, but I like their offense. I think Tech fans should always root against Arizona since they stole KJ Lewis from us. And then who's the other team in that bracket? Cincinnati. Yeah, 2-1 to start the year. Not a great start offensively. And so I'm riding with San Diego State.
I actually agree. I'm also kind of in the San Diego State bandwagon. When I talked to the guy from Creighton the other day, then he kind of mentioned San Diego State is their at least their out of conference rival, so to speak. So that's kind of their team that they are kind of excited to play, and then they play fairly often, and it's some tough, hard battles.
Played in the tournament last year.
Do what?
It was OT game in the tournament last year. It was, if I remember right, San Diego State had a pretty decent lead in that game, and Creighton was able to kind of sneak it out right at the end. So if they meet in the final, that's another storyline alongside Tech's rematch with Arkansas from 2021, Arizona possibly rematching with Tech with, again, the KJ Lewis game. You have all the possible sort of narratives there, but I think Creighton and San Diego State last year's tournaments kind of created some bad blood there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be a fun game to watch if that happens for sure. We'll definitely see. So we'll move on to Tech's side. I think I'll kind of skip this question. I kind of mentioned, your pick against Arkansas and Louisville, but I think this prediction is that Arkansas will win. And so let's approach it this way. Let's just say, well, you know what? Go ahead. I think Arkansas could potentially be on. I'm laughing when I say this. Upset alert. Maybe not upset alert, but I guess my point is, if I was an Arkansas fan, excuse me, while I would be super confident, I think a part of me would be a little bit hesitant, just because you'd have to think that, with 3 losses, you would think they might be hungry. There may be some extra oomph there, and then you wonder if Arkansas, not looking past them, but the feeling of kind of, okay, you know what, we'll probably win this game. What's next? I don't know. Your thoughts on my analysis there, I guess.
I mean, I will say crazy things happen in these in-season tournaments from time to time. I mean, whether it be small magnitude tournaments or large magnitude tournaments, I mean, you'll see shocking results. You see it, whether it be Final Four caliber teams losing to teams like Northern Iowa in the past or Charlotte in the past, or whether it be teams that just simply aren't necessarily up to the caliber. Like I remember back to 2020, you had a team in Dayton, which at the time wasn't playing all too well coming into that game, managed to upset Kansas there, went on to do really well the rest of the season. Last year, you had, again, another rematch between Dayton and Kansas, again, a close game between the two. And then Dayton ended up not really doing much of the season. So, I mean, there's certainly, you see these outlier games and unexpected games in the tournament. But I also think, first off, Arkansas is a really well-coached team with Eric Musselman and what he's been able to do with that team. So I think that they'll come into it mentally prepared. And also, I mean, Louisville's just been in shambles this year. I think that's the easiest way to just describe the situation. And I feel like had they not dropped those 3 games and had they been close games, I would be a little bit more lenient in terms of picking them to possibly upset Arkansas. But it's tough to go into Maui and upset a team that might be one of the top 5 most talented teams in the nation when you've had your confidence wrecked against teams like Wright State early on in the season.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that mental component of the game. That's why it's a sport. That's why we play it. And I mean, you're in Maui. You're in one of the most beautiful places in the world. You've got to stay dialed in. Louisville's reached that point. They're in the danger zone. I mean, it feels crazy to say 3 games into the season, but you just lost 3 bye games. You just can't do that. And so, after those first 1 or 2 losses, you're thinking, all right, time to rebound, time to put it together and go win this last easy game that we have on our schedule before we head out and play some of the best teams in college basketball. And you lose again. And so I think that Louisville is in panic mode right now. There's always that side of panic that can lead to preparation, but they are just in the danger zone. And ultimately, I think talent will usually win in basketball, and Arkansas might be one of the most talented rosters in the country. And I think they're probably the most talented roster in this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Louisville's last loss was pretty brutal when, the guy thinks he hits the game-winning shot and he's just like 0.2 or 0.3 seconds, too late. And of course, all their losses are by 1 point. It's definitely it's definitely kind of a tough way to start your season, no doubt. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. So we'll switch to Texas Tech first game versus Creighton. We do have this question, maybe in just a little bit from Nick in Portland. So, do y'all know if our team will enjoy a pig roast to kind of help them with their strength?
Man, I don't know. I mean, you gotta say, like, whatever Mark Adams feels like is gonna be the ideal strategy to maximize mental preparation for that game, whether that be meditation, whether it be you utilizing beach time or whatever. I mean, I will say last year at South Padre Island, first half against Incarnate Word, I don't think Tech was very well prepared for that, and might have spent a little bit too much time on the beach. So this year, maybe it's opposite. Maybe utilize the pig roast, but utilize a little bit of the Hawaiian beach, the nice weather, and kind of balance that together more. But who knows?
Yeah, I've never had a pig roast. I've never been to Hawaii. Gotta check that off the list soon. But I love like barbecuing and smoking meats, and so I feel like I would enjoy a pig roast. So maybe I'm the one that needs to have one.
I think that we should do a little, have a little luau with a little pig roast, and I think it's on. So okay, we'll get back to seriousness here. So let's just talk about Creighton. So you just the thoughts on your team as a whole, or just the superstars. We have the big center. We have Nimhard, the brother of is it Andrew? I think it's Andrew Nimhard from Gonzaga. So we have Ryan Nimhard playing for Creighton. Anyway, just go ahead, Emory. Your thoughts just on Creighton as the team, or the big dogs, players we got to watch for.
Yeah, so I think with Creighton, I mean, number one is if you've watched college basketball for decades, you'll know Greg McDermott's offensive system is incredible. The spacing, the off-ball plays they do, it is one of the best in the nation. And I guess the best way to highlight that is just to look at the 2-point percentage they're shooting over the course of the season. It's only been 3 games, but they are shooting almost 62% from 2-point range, which for me oftentimes comes down to sort of how well you're able to draw up space efficiently for your players. Because, I mean, obviously you see unassisted shots at the rim, whatnot, but at the same time, being able to be that good from 2-point range, get that many clean looks at the rim is incredible. And it's a trend that goes back to them for a lot of years. You look at the pace they play at has kind of gone down a little bit over the last few years. They kind of played more of a half-court offense. I think some of that's down to just sort of the personnel they've had recently. Some of it's just kind of adapting with more teams going fast, but certainly, I mean, McDermott's one of the best offensive minds in the country. And then looking at the roster, I mean, it all starts with Ryan Carpenter up at the center position, 7'1". I mean, last year he was an integral part of their offense. This season so far, he looks amazing. I mean, you look at his percentage, he's shooting upwards of 86% at the rim this year. I mean, he is whenever a player has a true shooting percentage over 83% and is so efficient on the inside, that's incredible. You add into that his defensive abilities, rim protection is good. I think that as far as 7'1" players go, he's pretty good from a switchability standpoint. I don't think they'll be too comfortable with him on the perimeter, but still, I think he's kind of the centerpiece of their team, which kind of stands out. And then outside of that, I mean, you've got Ryan Nimhard, who, like Andrew Nimhard at Gonzaga and at Florida, was really, really good as a ball handler. I think last year He kind of struggled a little bit at times, but for being a freshman, being kind of thrust into that point guard role, I felt like he did a good job at Creighton, and down the stretch of the season was really important. And then you look down the rest of the roster, and they've got some good wings, whether it be Baylor Scheiman, kind of the transfer from South Diego State, that makes no sense. South Dakota State. He's was one of the best wings available in the portal last year. That was a big get for them. He is 46% from three last season. This season has not been shooting it quite as well, but obviously small sample size, whatever. He's at 41%. You've got Arthur Kulamo from last season as well. He's a versatile wing. Trey Alexander. And if you look down the roster, outside of Shireman, the one thing that I would say is a weakness of the Creighton team, outside of a couple of guys, and it's kind of ironic to say about Creighton, but it's their three-point shooting. Like, you would expect Creighton offense, high flying, a lot of three-pointers, a lot of open shots. But you look at last season, they shot only about 31% over the course of the season. And this season, they're at 35%. And that's with them bringing in probably the best three-point shooter in the portal. So really, this is a Creighton team that has a lot of defensive versatility. They've got a really good point guard in Nimhard, in my opinion. They've got wings that can switch really 2 through 4 and can do a lot of different things with their lineup. And then they have a center at the sort of forefront of what they do offensively that can also be versatile defensively and is at least somewhat switchable.
Yeah, I think this is just a really well-balanced team. I think they've got good things on both sides of the ball. You look at their offense and defense, either top 25 or top 30, depending on what analytics model you look at, but just a team that does a lot of things well. They score inside really well, take very high quality shots. They score a lot around the basket. But I think there are a couple of things that I want to hit on. One of them being the turnover rate for Creighton. Texas Tech is turning the ball over on 25% of their possessions this year. That's 340th in college basketball, while Creighton is turning it over on just 11.7% of their possessions, which is 12th in college basketball. And if you want to just look at what their ball handling is like, take Ryan Nimhard, a guy that's playing on the ball for, 30 minutes a night. What's his line? Well, he's got 27 assists to 2 turnovers this year. 27 assists to 2 turnovers. That is an absurd line. And so they protect the ball really, really well. And it starts with him. And I think that's my main point, my main key to this game is you've got to control the turnovers in this game. And I mean, I know that I've been defensive over that regarding certain players on Twitter, but as a team issue, you need to protect the ball in this game because Creighton is not going to give you extra possessions. And so I think you've got to protect the ball. And then the other thing is Creighton does not get to the free throw line. They have really struggled to shoot free throws this year. And so if you're Texas Tech, don't send them to the line. Keep making good plays, shoot them, force them into tough shots and play your defense. But overall, a really good team. It's a good early matchup for Texas Tech. You kind of hate to have to play them first, but I think it's also a great test for you. I think you're going to learn a lot about your team in this game.
Oh, absolutely. And Creighton wants to get out and transition. And so if Texas Tech is turning the ball over, it's definitely going to help them do that, or at least live ball turnovers. Right. And so it's definitely hard for Texas Tech to defend if it's, 3-on-1 or 2-on-1 or even a 1-on-0 fast break the other way if we're too sloppy with the ball. At least live ball, obviously dead ball turnovers, we can get back on defense, but absolutely. Of course, you have Shireman. They're hitting, threes. You've got, forgive me. I'll just call him Calc, the center. Was 7 foot, I believe, and they can run the offense through him. And then on the game that I watched with Creighton, I noticed that he mostly stayed kind of on defensively near the basket, whether that's a zone or whatever the actual defensive alignment is. And so I wonder if can Tech pull him away from there? Is he going to stay under the basket in that zone kind of position, or what's the case as far as that goes. But we'll see what Adams draws up, or I guess maybe Steve Green, since he's more the offensive guy as far as that goes. And so and we've kind of just talked a bit, and it was already on my notes, but Dr. Jacqueline Cravens Pickens from Twitter does ask, what other than limiting turnovers, what are the keys to the game to beat Creighton?
Yeah, I think defensively, I think trying to get Kalkbrenner out there on switches, like I mentioned, I feel like they're a little bit more comfortable with him switching than most like 7'1" guys with his stature. But at the same time, like you mentioned, they run him in the paint quite a bit of drop coverage versus pick and roll. And like I think for Creighton, or to beat Creighton's defense, you kind of have to sort of isolate where you have advantages, which sounds kind of obvious because that's sort of how you would play everything. But I will say, like, Nembhard is really not a positive defender, which I would say is the difference between him and his brother. Like, I think Andrew Nembhard is one of the best point of attack defenders that we've seen in college basketball over the last few years. And RJ is just simply not to that caliber yet and has a little bit of height disadvantage as well. Just kind of finding those defensive mismatches. Again, limiting the turnovers is an obvious thing. I feel like that's going to be drilled into the ball handler's hand, or into their heads over the course of the next few days. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to win this game, plain and simple. And with that in mind, also just getting good shots offensively and sort of utilizing the clock. I think you can play a half-court game and sort of wear down Creighton's defense a little, or their defense a little bit. And then on the other side of things, it's just going to come down to discipline off the ball. I think early on in the season, we've seen Tech has made some lapses when it comes to rotations. I mean, I think you're still trying to figure out the lineups that kind of work best together defensively. And I think there's some communication lapses. Those things are going to happen early season from time to time, but it's just about recovering off of those. I'm not too worried about the matchup in the paint with Kalkbrenner. I know that's something the Tech fans have been sort of worried about, but I do think having Bacho as the main guy, as long as he doesn't get in foul trouble, I think is going to be. Kalkbrenner is the type of center where I feel like you have that sort of limiting factor in Bacho that's going to help. And then as well as that, like just avoiding back cuts and avoiding the off-ball mistakes and trying to get Creighton to make mistakes. It's not easy with a guy like Ryan Nembhard running the offense, but I do think that there are things you can do. They're not a great three-point shooting team. Obviously, like I mentioned, you're going to have to make sure the rotations are there and limiting them, but I just think in general, like play your game defensively in the half court. Don't make too many mistakes. Try not to overcommit. Like Ryan mentioned, they don't get to the foul line a lot. I think that's an advantage you can take it. That's something you can take advantage of. They're also not really a great team at driving in terms of like their ability to have multiple guys that can really create well off the dribble. So I think that's something you can look at as an advantage. But just in general, not making the defensive lapses, offensively, playing your offense, trying to get good shots late in the shot clock, and take care of the ball. If you turn the ball over 20 times, I can guarantee you that you'll be playing Louisville the next day.
Yeah, my overly simplistic answer would be the pick and roll offense has to work. I think this game has Davion Warren, or not Davion Warren, I've already done that like 3 times this season, Davion Harmon written all over it. I think he showed you in that last game kind of what he can do when you just let him be the engine of the offense. And so I think if you run the pick and roll offense with the ball in his hands, you can kind of get Kalkbrenner out of the paint. You can kind of force him into some tougher matchups because, like I said earlier, while Creighton, does not get to the free throw line, they also don't foul. They are fouling on 11%, or that's their free throw rate is 11%, which is the 4th best in college basketball. And so you're likely not going to get to the stripe very much. And so when you do take shots, you're going to want to make sure that they're high quality ones so that you're not leaving with empty possessions on whistles that may be swallowed.
Yeah. And then I'm sorry, go ahead, Emory.
I was just going to add in on the pick and roll real quick. That's one of the things that Tech did in the 2019 matchup against the two teams that really sort of got them back in the game, because that was a game you didn't have Jemias Ramsey in, and you actually brought on Andreas Saversov to kind of run a pick and pop type of scheme, and it really sort of messed with Creighton. And obviously you have different personnel, you have different players and different sort of things, but it's interesting to see because I think that was one thing that worked really well against McDermott's defense. I think again this year you have the personnel to be able to run a pick and pop or a pick and roll effectively.
Yeah, and I would add to that, and I do expect this to happen, but you definitely have to play Texas Tech style of basketball. You can't get into, if it's run at Creighton's pace, a little more faster, Tech's obviously in trouble. But if it is a more defensive, use a shot clock game, you kind of force Creighton to slow it down. Obviously you have some advantage in that regard. But turnovers, that's the key. Like that's, or at least the main key. So she kind of handicapped us there, but that's fine. And then we'll talk about she kind of mentions, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but who do you think leaves Maui 3-0, and then what record does Texas Tech will have? And so I'll go ahead and ask the first question. We'll save Texas Tech record for last, but who would you say would leave Maui 3-0? Who's your biggest, I guess, possible culprit?
I think I'm going to go with San Diego State on this one for a slight upset over Arkansas. And I think my reasoning for this is that I'm not sure if Arkansas is going to play Nick Smith. Like I mentioned earlier, that completely changes the upside of their team. And they're a younger team with kind of more moving pieces than San Diego State. And I think if you were to play this tournament in March, if you were going to look at the teams that are sort of have the highest upside, I think Arkansas has to be probably the number one team in that case. But it's a 3-game tournament, 3 days. You're really going to be working on sort of limited reps, limited opportunity to make wholesale changes in scout. And I just think a younger team like Arkansas that hasn't really integrated quite as much, I feel like they're more likely to drop a game. And I also really trust that in tournament games, experience matters. And San Diego State kind of has that experience playing together. I think that's the thing. Arkansas has some guys like Ricky Council that have significant, important minutes, but they're not necessarily together. Texas Tech, same sort of deal. You've got Davion Harmon, who's played a lot of important basketball. You've got Kevin O'Banner, who's played a lot of important basketball, so on and so forth. But they haven't really, Kerwin Walton as well, but they haven't played together important basketball. I just think in this tournament, San Diego State has the talent, the requisite talent to keep up with those teams. I just think the experience is going to kind of push them forward.
That's spicy, man. I like it. I'd probably go. See, that's the thing. In the hypothetical scenario, I'd pick Arkansas. So like in this scenario, I pick Arkansas just because of the talent. But if I was actually putting points on it, I'd probably go Creighton, which feels a little bit like a dice roll, and
Really?
also like I'm committing treason right now. But I feel like their experience, I feel like gives them an edge, especially down low with Kalkbrenner. And just the way that Ryan Nimhart has played this season has given me a lot of confidence in his game. So hypothetically picking Arkansas, but if I was betting, I'd probably go Creighton.
Man, I gotta say, the Creighton hype coming into this season, I find a little bit unfounded. And my reasoning for this, I think it's something that you've seen over the course of this year in the preseason, is teams that return a lot of talent from mediocre tournament teams that pushed a 1 seed to the brink have been getting quite overrated. We've seen it with TCU.
I was going to ask if you could think of anybody.
We've seen it with UNC. We've seen it with Creighton now. Like, I think Creighton hasn't played anyone to disrupt that notion. You look at the analytics from last year, they were not really a top 40 team. They return a lot of pieces for sure. I don't think you can discount that, but were they good enough last year to say that on merit, just with the returning pieces and development, that they're going to make a huge step forward to be on the level of Arkansas? I'm not sure. And I feel like I have no doubts that this Creighton team is going to be good, but I just have my hesitancy in terms of like some of the hype that we've been seeing this year with them.
Did you see the piece of content they posted about giving out a free PS5 to students that went to the soccer game and then the basketball game?
Oh, the raffle, because Coach McDermott had the PS5 thing. Funny enough, Nick Smith had the same thing happen to him a few days ago on his
that was a great piece of content that Creighton Athletics did to capitalize on a very awkward moment. And for that reason, for the great social media content, I am hammering Creighton.
We're all for marketing on this pod. All for it.
That's right. Yeah, I'll probably lean Arkansas as well. Well, I'm a homer, and so I'll lean Texas Tech, but for the sake of the argument, I'll lean Arkansas. And it could be, this is probably dumb, but the winner of game 2, which is dumb, because if you lose, obviously you can't move to game 3. But just saying, between Creighton and Arkansas, maybe the winner of that game. But yeah, but you know what, San Diego State, I think they'll be there on the other side, so they have just as good a chance as any, for sure. Okay, so let's just talk about the game itself against Creighton. And we kind of already touched on this generally, but I'll ask it in this way. So if Tech wins the game, what probably happened?
I think offensively is where I would put the focus towards, because you're going to see, if Tech wins, I feel like you'll see probably the best offensive showing that Tech's had all year. Hopefully you'll have limited turnovers, 3-pointers. Like, I think there's going to need to be a little bit of shooting variance required. Like, you can't have an off shooting game. Just with the way the Tech's offense has looked so far, they're relying a bit more on those spot up 3 looks. I really feel like it's going to take a good effort from someone in the backcourt, whether that be Pop Isaacs or Davion Harmon. And I mean, I think offensively, if you have a good showing and you don't turn the ball over too much, then again, this Creighton team is not as good at 3-point shooting as I think some people make them out to be, and they're also not quite as fast. So you can kind of get yourself into the type of game you want to play, as long as you don't foul, as long as you don't turn it over. So if you don't do those 2 things, and if one of your guards has a good shooting night, I think there's a good probability that you can come away with a win.
Yeah, this is actually a really fun matchup, because a lot of the metrics that kind of cover Texas or tempo in college basketball, Texas Tech and Creighton are almost identical. They play at almost the same exact offensive pace this year. And so obviously a very limited sample of games that we've gotten to see this year, but I think that's a good indicator that you can kind of force the kind of game that you want. And so I think that's a prerequisite to winning, is keep them out of transition, play the game the way you want to play it. And then just to add some numbers behind what Emory's saying, because I completely agree, I would say you probably need to shoot over 43% as a team from deep, and then turn the ball over less than 14 times to walk away with a win. I think you're going to need to see some variance in your shooting. I think you're going to need to make your open shots, especially with Kalkbrenner down low. And I think you're going to need to take good care of the basketball.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, the obvious answer is, keep your turnovers down. The first game we had 20, then we had 12. You're like, oh, okay, maybe first game, and then we had 20 again. But maybe we'll repeat the pattern, and then we'll have 12 again, and that would be fantastic. You're definitely putting yourself at a chance to win. Obviously, control the pace. I've kind of already mentioned that. Play the Texas Tech pace, not Creighton's pace. As far as allowing transition buckets, not that they play extremely fast, as Emory stated, but just their definitely desire to get quick buckets and get turnovers, and then score in transition here. So on the flip side, and maybe this is just the exact opposite, but if Texas Tech loses this game, what probably happened?
Probably a number of things. Like, there's any number of likelihoods. You could have Creighton having an outlier shooting game. You could have Baylor Shireman kind of deciding to go 8 for 11 from 3 or something like that. You could have Tech having 22 turnovers and both your guards turn over the ball at least 4 times. You could have a rough shooting night for Tech where you don't turn the ball over, you don't foul a lot, but you just simply shoot 3 of 18 from 3 or something like that. Or you could have a game where your best players get in foul trouble early. Like, I mean, you could have to play 30 minutes without Daniel Baccio on the court. Like, there's 5 or 6 things that could happen that I feel like would spell disaster. And that's not to say that Creighton's some like amazing team. I've already given my take on them, but more so just along the lines of this Creighton team is really balanced. Like, they're going to force you to play good basketball to beat them. And this Tech team early on in the season doesn't have a whole lot of lineup sort of solidifiers. So like if you get in foul trouble, if you have players that are struggling, say like Pop or Davion don't play well, then suddenly your margin of error is razor thin. So there's a number of things that could happen. But I would say most likely is either A, the turnovers, or B, just the shooting simply isn't there and you can't quite get enough offensively.
Yeah, we haven't been on a podcast together in over half a year, and yet our on-air chemistry is still just perfectly linked because you continue to steal my exact talking points. I was going to talk about it from an individual standpoint, and one of the key things there was Daniel Bacho in foul trouble. You cannot afford to get him in foul trouble with Kalkbrenner down low. That's going to be a really, really big part of this game, is just how Daniel Bacho handles, because I'm guessing that they would go at him early. They've had a couple of days now to scout this team. They know they're thin down low. They know they've been playing Bacho down low and kind of O'Banner in the 4. They're going to attack him. I guarantee you they will go right at him to start that game. They're going to want him to pick up a couple of cheap ones. And so he's got to play like a veteran and kind of fight through that. And then I would say, in addition to that, just an off night for Davion Harmon offensively. I think he needs to be good in this game, and if he doesn't show up, it might show for Texas Tech in the final score.
Yeah, it's definitely right there with you. You know, of course, a bad shooting night. Also, you know, the free throw. You know, our first game, I think we shot 80% from the free throw line. Second game was 77, but the third game we were only like 11 of 18 or 11 of 19. You know, from the charity stripe. You got to shoot. I mean, that, you know, that's just above 50%. So you got to, you know, shoot better from that when you're given that opportunity. So it needs to return. You know, hopefully that's an aberration. Hopefully the 80% or 70, you know, high 70s is more online to what this team is going to be. But you know, that's definitely one way. When you get free points, you've got to take it. Obviously, you've got to keep your turnovers to a respectable amount. And then you've got to hit, you know, Pop Isaacs, you know, Kerwin Walton, you know, Jaden Tyson. You know, when the 3 is there, you know, they need to hit it, right? You know, to keep up with, you know, what we think is going to be at least a formidable, you know, a Creighton, scoring game. And so you definitely got to keep up. And then, of course, you know, I mentioned it, you got to play Texas Tech's pace, you know, make Creighton use the shot clock, you know, while you also use the shot clock to keep it down. So, okay, so we'll move on to game 2. Let's just say that, you know, regardless of win or loss, you know, Texas Tech faces Louisville. You know, what is your confidence level?
Tech plays Louisville. I think I'm treating this like a Louisiana Tech game, where if you win by 5 or more, you're okay with it, because Louisville is somewhat talented. Like it's not like they're complete amateurs. You're not playing Incarnate Word, but at the same time, like, you should win that game. Like, they're struggling, they're reeling. Hypothetically, I'm gonna go ahead and say Arkansas wins the first game, so that means that you've lost to Creighton, but that also means Louisville still hasn't picked up a win this year. So there's no reason you can't win that. I think I'd be expecting a win. If you lose, you're gonna have some questions about the program, but stranger things have happened.
Yeah, I think I would probably pick Tech to cover in this game up to 13 points, which feels a little aggressive in a tournament game, but I have no reason to believe in Louisville basketball right now. My confidence level would be very, very high.
Yeah, I just got one word: dub. Okay. If Tech faces Arkansas, what is your confidence level?
Kind of flipped almost. Like, I think Arkansas is going to be a really tough matchup, and I think this is something that I'm going to talk about more as the season goes on in a variety of different ways. But I really think that teams like Arkansas and Kansas have built rosters that are tailor-made to defend the roster construction that Tech has right now. And so, to give a little bit of background on that, Tech, if they go with their current starting lineup, will have 2 guards that are really at best 6'3". You have a forward that's like 6'7", 6'8" or so. You have another forward that's in that range of height, and then you have a center that's 6'11". And the problem with all those players is there's not a whole lot of switchability there. And so the immediate counter to that, and then you look at the Tex rotation outside of that, you've got Crow and Walton and KJ Allen come as your main guys coming off the bench so far this season, and to a lesser degree like Elijah Fisher. But the big thing there is there's not a whole lot of positional versatility. And at times that can be really good. Like Tech's roster, I would say, has a ton of talent on it and a ton of like upside. But with the way Arkansas has built that roster, they've got so much switchability between their wings, and really just pretty much their whole roster has kind of that 2-4, 2-5 switchability. And Tech utilized it last year really well. You saw what they were able to do with guys like Adonis Arms, Kevin McCullough, TJ Shannon, Davion Warren, even Malik Wilson and Clarence Noli on the shorter end were still able to be really versatile guards. And against teams like Kansas last year, Tech had an abnormal amount of success. Like they were able to defend, because Kansas last year was more of that sort of positional basketball. And then kind of the switch flipped over time. They learned to be more of that positionless. They started playing KJ Adams more. They started running less of the McCormick big lineups with like Jalen Wilson at the four. So I think there's a lot to say, but I would say my kind of confidence with Arkansas versus Tech and that sort of matchup in general is pretty low. And it's not an Arkansas specific thing. It's just that I don't think this Tech team is going to match up well against teams that have a ton of that positional versatility. And maybe that changes with how Tech runs the rotation, but from what we've seen in the first 3 games, you're only running Crow and Walton and KJ Allen consistently off the bench. I just don't think that that gives you enough versatility against a team like Arkansas. And I hope I'm wrong, but that's just kind of what I see so far.
Yeah, this Arkansas team is a nightmare to me. I mean, just exactly how I would want to build a college basketball team, especially on the defensive end of the floor. I would probably give my confidence level at a number probably about 15% right now. This is just a really difficult matchup, and that's even without Nick Smith Jr. And who knows how good they're going to be once he's back in the rotation and back fully healthy. And so that's a really tough matchup. And so I really want these two teams to play, because I think it would be a good test for you. And I also kind of want to hear Mark Adams kind of gash about their roster in the press conference, because this has got to be like exactly how he would want to build a team. It's exactly the blueprint that he used last year. And so I just kind of want to have some quotes from Mark Adams about how insane this roster is, because I think the length and the athleticism of this Arkansas team is really lost on the everyday college basketball viewer. And so yeah, I think it'd be fun to hear Mark talk about his dream team.
Yeah, the only where Tech maybe has a maybe a better than average chance is the fact that Arkansas is pretty young as well, right? So they need to gel. So being this early, you think there's a chance. And then Texas Tech having the first game. We didn't really talk about it, but I don't know if everybody realizes that, the first game in Maui between Texas Tech and Creighton, we play at 9:30 in the morning. It's 2:30 here Central, but 9:30 there. And so, you wonder if how the routine, is going to work out if the coaches are messing with the clocks or whatever. So they the team thinks it's, 2:30 or whatever, but it's still got to be a tough transition, maybe some blackout curtains to go to bed early. But it's just the fact that, Tech played the first game. And so they would at least have, in theory, 2 more hours, while they scout the team, so to speak, to kind of prepare. But, other than that, yeah, it's definitely a tough matchup, below 50%, obviously, for Texas Tech. But, I think it's higher than maybe what normally you would consider, just the fact that they are also dealing with youth on their team. Okay, so we'll just fast forward to a potential game 3, and not that we need to talk to each specific team, but just on what you think is going to happen. I guess what is your confidence level between who Tech faces from the other side for that other side of the bracket for the third game of this tournament?
I think you're really hoping that you get to face either San Diego State or even, I mean, honestly, any of San Diego State, Arizona, or Ohio State is going to be a good test for you on that third game. If you play Cincinnati, it's not the end of the world. That could still end up being a Q2 game for you on the resume, but I don't think you're going to be learning a ton from playing against that team. But certainly, like, I guess the best case scenario is you end up in the second game matchup. The second best scenario is you play either Arizona or Ohio State, and that ends up being for third or for fifth, doesn't really matter. Like, I think at that point, you're still 1-1 at that point, and you're still gonna have the chance to pick up probably a Q1 win. And then the worst case scenario, play Cincinnati. So with San Diego State playing for the championship or whoever you're playing, I think if it's against San Diego State, not overly confident for similar reasons to what I said against Arkansas. Also, the experience I mentioned for picking San Diego State outright to win the tournament. But I think that's a winnable game, but not necessarily like a high probability. And then Ohio State and Arizona, I think, are maybe similar caliber teams to what you are at this point in the season. So I think those will be fun and really good tests for Tech. And then Cincinnati, again, similar to Louisville, not quite as dire, I would say, in terms of needing to win, but I would say that's still a game you want to be able to win. And I'd pick Tech to cover up to 7 or 8 points, although there's a lot that could change this weekend that could kind of impact the narrative.
Yeah, from an RPI standpoint, you want anybody but Cincinnati at this point. And any of those three teams between Ohio State, San Diego State, and Arizona would be both good games and good resume boosters, regardless of what happens. And so I think you're really just hoping to miss Cincinnati, and then I would probably pick Texas Tech to beat Ohio State, and then I would probably pick them to lose against San Diego State and Arizona.
What do you consider a successful tournament record for Texas Tech?
Well, I think if you pick up one good win, that's a win, whether it be versus Creighton in game 1 or Arkansas somehow in game 2, if they for whatever reason lose to Louisville, or in game 3 versus whoever. I think as long as you win one quality game, you can move on with that. Not the best thing in the world, but Tech has also overcome worse tournaments in the past. I mean, you lost 2 games against Iowa and Creighton in 2019 in Vegas and still turned around. And by the end of the year, yes, they struggled down the stretch, but that's still a tournament team and played top 25 basketball at times. So I think that you win one game in this tournament, you can move on with it. Also, like, again, Maui's a tournament that kind of creates funky results at times. As long as you're not going 0-3 losing to Louisville and Cincinnati, I think you can work with it. Ideally, you beat one of Arkansas, San Diego State, or Creighton, and you go on. You pick up 2 quad 1A wins. You get into the top 15. You have a whole lot of momentum. But hey, we'll be realistic, optimistic. One win, as long as it's against a good team, you're okay with it.
Yeah, I'd actually maybe go a little bit more aggressive, and I'd probably say one win against Creighton, or you beat Louisville and then you beat the next round matchup, which would be, I think that's where it gets into the other side of the bracket, if I'm not mistaken. So Ohio State, Cincinnati, one of those teams. But yeah, I'd say you either want to beat Creighton, which is a tall task, and if Texas Tech gets that win, regardless of what happens next, I think you get on a plane ride back home happy, because it showed something about your team that you were able to beat someone of that caliber. But if you don't get that opening win against Creighton, I think you need to beat Louisville, who, assuming they lose against Arkansas, because that's just a give me. If you lose that game, then it's panic mode. But I think you got to win that game, and that game is easy enough to where I think you want to win that game and then one other one, just to kind of give you some edge. Because going 1-1 in Maui, or 1-2, whatever they end up being, and your only win is against a team that came in with 3 by-game losses, like you don't want that. That's not an early season boost of confidence. And so I'd go win over Creighton or win over Louisville and someone else.
That's pretty fair. I was thinking, 2-1. That's kind of where I'm at. 1-2. But kind of like Emory said, if the one is over Creighton and you just happen to lose your next two games, like I would think that would be could be seen as successful. As long as there wasn't, obviously we're talking, there's not like a blowout. If you lose by 20 points, the reasonable Tech fans, I'm not sure would be too excited. Trumpeting a successful tournament trip. The reasonable Tech fans would probably expect 3-0, right? So, and I guess on the flip side, I guess you've kind of already said it. So, in that sense, I guess the only failure in that sense was probably 0-3, or maybe 1-2, but your only win is against somebody, Louisville, basically.
Yeah, I guess there's two things I would consider to be like a failure. One of them would be the record, which is if your only wins coming inside of Louisville or Cincinnati, you've probably done something wrong. I think winning Louisville, losing to another Q1 team in Ohio State, Arizona, not the end of the world, but you want to win one of those games if you lose to Creighton at the beginning. Or another failure I could see happening is you win against Creighton in the first game, but then you get blown out twice in a row. I still think you can take positives from that, but again, like the style of that game, getting blown out is never easy on a young team. It's never easy on the team in general. And like if you end the tournament on a bad note, I feel like it speaks a lot more than starting the tournament on a bad note. So it's hard to say what I would consider a failure, but certainly avoid losing to Louisville, avoid losing to Cincinnati, and I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, I would say a blowout in the Creighton game and then another loss somewhere, whether that's, Louisville or somebody else further down the bracket. I think a blowout against Creighton and then another loss kind of rings the bells a bit.
Okay, the moment we've all been waiting for. What is your Texas Tech tournament record prediction?
I'm going 1-2, but I've got them winning Creighton, losing to Arkansas, and then losing to Arizona. I think Arizona takes third place in that matchup. But I think Tech matches up decently well against Creighton because they have Bacho on the inside, again, hinging on him, not getting in foul trouble. Think you're going to face better 3-point shooting teams in conference play. And while Tech is going to make defensive lapses on rotation, any team's going to do that this early in the season. So I have confidence in Tech beating Creighton, even though it's going to be a close game, could go either way. I think Arkansas's versatility again just kind of makes that a difficult matchup for Tech. And then I think Arizona is a little bit tougher to project. We haven't seen this sort of group play meaningful basketball that much this season, but certainly, I mean, they've got the talent on paper to match up well. And I think as well as that, you're going to be coming off of, hypothetically speaking, 2 straight really difficult games, whereas Arizona kind of has, not to say the lighter side of the bracket, but certainly the side of the bracket that I would say isn't quite as tough from a schematic standpoint, having to plan for Arkansas and for Creighton, 2 very different teams. Like I think that there's more possibility for Arizona to be rested. But long story short, I've got Tech going 1-2, but I think they knock off Creighton in game 1.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the exact opposite. I'm gonna go 2-1 with a loss to Creighton in the opening game, and then a win over Louisville, and then a win over Ohio State. I think I'm just a little bit concerned about the depth down low for Texas Tech and the way that Creighton has been able to protect the basketball this year. It's not just a team that's good at protecting the ball facing a team that's very bad protecting the ball. It's a team that's very good protecting the ball playing a team that's very bad protecting the ball, which is just it doesn't give me a lot of confidence for Texas Tech in this matchup. But I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be really, really close. Probably like a 65-62 type game. I can see it kind of falling under that range. But yeah, I'm going to go loss to Creighton, at least a 13-point win over Louisville, and then a close fought game against Ohio State for which I believe would be 5th place.
Yes. And that's where I'm at too. Actually, I've got us 2-1. Without knowing who you're going to play third, obviously. So you're just kind of rolling dice there. But just looking at, I see a loss, at least a potential loss versus Creighton. Of course, in 2019 we played them. It went into overtime, so that game was close, and so anything's possible. And I do like our chances against Creighton. It's just I just don't know if we've had enough time, even though you have a full week to prepare, right? Because playing from Monday and then we don't play again, till the Maui Monday, I guess if you want to call it the Maui Monday. I just made that up in my head. Whereas Creighton played on Thursday, and so they've had a shorter time to prepare. So maybe that favors us. But then again, you could bring in, is Tech going to be rusty? Well, that's an argument as well. We don't know until we get there, right? Till we play at 9:30 in the morning. And so, but as of right now today, I'll say loss, win, win. Kind of in the same vein as Ryan there. And so there you have it. I guess that kind of concludes Dr. Pickens' tweet there. But so a few more questions here. Some that we can't really answer, although I did Google it. So Don Franklin asked the best mahi in Maui. The fish so nice they named it twice, which mahi is excellent. I highly recommend it. But the best mahi I've had is actually at Outback Steakhouse. So I don't know if that's really going to count. I'm sure there's an Outback Steakhouse in Maui. It wouldn't surprise me, but that's probably not what he's looking for. According to Google, let's see. Let me pull it. Switch tabs. Looks like we got Seascape, Ma'alea, if I pronounce that correctly. That is it's about 30 minutes from downtown Maui. So Don Franklin, I guess assuming that you are going to Maui, maybe check out Seascape. They did not pay me for that endorsement. They have no idea who I am. So I don't know. Have y'all had Maui? Excuse me, mahi? Oh, for real? Oh, it's excellent. Excellent. Let's see. Okay, who do we got? Next question. Okay, so this is somebody from Gambling Gauchos. So who is Emory's least favorite gaucho and why is it Kyle? Okay. Just kidding, Kyle. Let me rustle my papers real quick.
All I gotta say, Gauchos, can't hate any of them. However, I will say, run the damn ball. Not a huge proponent, actually. I think Zach Kitley was running a perfectly fine offense. And the gaslighting I saw last week, yes, it led to a win, but narratives don't care about wins and losses. They care about narratives in general. So I gotta say, I don't want to hear it about, let's run the ball 55 times. No, I want to throw it 80 times. I want to see Tyler Shuck's arm fall off. And if it means 50 screen passes a game, if it means that the offensive line's getting torn up, it doesn't matter. You stick to a narrative and you follow it. But no, I mean, you guys all do excellent stuff over there. So I'm not going to pick between the three of them.
It's 41 runs, not 50.
Close enough, whatever. Still too much. That's still 38 too much.
All right, we got Jesus 1212 asking what type of team will pose our biggest challenge this year, and he has, i.e., physicality, defense, or or the three ball, somebody that shoots hot from three.
I think I already kind of answered this earlier, but teams that have a makeup similar to last year's Texas Tech team, like teams with a lot of versatility defensively with a lot of length, I think is going to make it difficult for your rotation. There's ways to counter that. I think if you bring guys like Elijah Fisher, Lamar Washington, even a Demarion Williams into the rotation, you kind of limit that impact a little bit. But as it stands now, and also without Fordell's AMAC, that kind of plays in. But just to add another thing, I think a team that is really, really good at handling the ball, like a Creighton, has high-level decision makers and can drive well. Really just good guard play all around, whether it be shooting, whether it be ball handling, or whether it be their ability to drive effectively. All of those, I think, are going to be maybe a possible limitation of this team.
Arkansas. That's my answer.
Fair enough. Yeah, I don't think a physical team is going to be a huge problem. Maybe right now, just with Pop Isaacs, his injury and just not being quite up to snuff. And then, Elijah Fisher, basically should be a high school senior, maybe doesn't quite have the body yet. But, with Mark Adams' style, I don't see a physical team overall being a huge issue. Obviously a strong defensive team, and that's pretty much what you're alluding to, is an issue. And really any team that gets hot from three is a problem for anybody. So I don't know if that's just necessarily, specific for Texas
In
Tech
the
as
state
far as,
playing in Lubbock with Nigel Pack somehow returning and hitting every single shot. Is that an answer?
yeah, it's just nuts. Or, the guy from Oklahoma State that I think it almost won the game. I think we won in overtime, but, they get hot, what can you do? His second question is, will our young guards be able to close out on, Creighton's outside shooting?
I think their outside shooting is maybe for me less of an issue than just their pure ball handling and not making unnecessary defensive mistakes. Like Nimward's so good at taking care of the ball. You have obviously Shireman's going to be important to close out on, but I feel like you're going to have wings that kind of take on that assignment, like a Jalen Tyson, I would imagine, has for that issue. I mean, I think as Sam kind of looking at the young guards, though, I would say you're going to have these bumps in the roads defensively. Like that's just going to happen. I think Pop Isaacs naturally his size puts him a bit of a disadvantage defensively, but even without that, pretty much any guard you have in the Big 12 is going to have to go through their lumps defensively early on. And they might play 3 or 4 good games, but you're still going to have those off-ball errors, maybe getting a little bit too eager. So I'm not too worried about the shooting of Creighton per se, and that could bite me. But at the same time, I think that the off-ball defense is just something you're going to have to expect the guards to make mistakes because they're young, Pop Isaacs, even Jalen Dyson, like you're going to have those inexperienced moments come into play. So it's not something I'm worried about with the shooting per se, but even though I do think Creighton could get hot, and it is something that over the long term, you're going to have a couple of those games where your guards kind of have those defensive errors.
Yep, I'd agree. I say most important factor to that is communication. I think it's more about Tech's defense communicating than it is about Tech's personnel or Creighton's three-point shooting ability. I think Tech has the ability to match up with these players, to defend the perimeter, to handle it when the ball gets put on the floor. I don't think Creighton is a team that will scorch and torch you from deep consistently. And so really the main thing is, can Texas Tech make the proper rotations, get on the correct man at a successful rate throughout the game? And as Emory mentioned, that comes with growing pains. There were a lot of missed rotations in that Law Tech game. I'm assuming that's going to be something that they're trying to work on at practice this week. And so if it's better, I think that should give you a good feeling about this Texas Tech team.
Okay, some guy by the name of Rob asks, what's your favorite mythical creature, if you have one?
I'm gonna let Ryan answer this one first. I gotta think about it for a second.
I'm gonna go Bigfoot.
Interesting. I'm more of a Loch Ness Monster guy myself, but I mean, I just have to say it's really cool. Like, I mean, what can you say? It's for me, causing chaos on the sea, completely different than causing chaos in the wild. I mean, you see Bigfoot, it's really like it's been a mystery. I saw someone saying, hey, maybe DB Cooper is Bigfoot. The world may never know. And if DB Cooper counts as a mythical creature, I would say that he's up there on my list. But certainly, I mean, the Loch Ness Monster gotta be up there for me.
I dig it. I like the Loch Ness Monster. All right, I think this is the last one that we have from Philip or Felipe. So I guess we're trying to make our perfect Texas Tech quarterback, maybe the greatest quarterback in the history of ever. just picking parts of, I guess previous Texas Tech quarterbacks. So thinking of, maybe legs, and then arm strength or accuracy, maybe leadership, kind of what parts of former Texas Tech quarterbacks, or even the current ones, would you put together to make your ultimate, NFL quarterback?
All right, so first off, I'm just gonna make a shameless plug here. You can check out my film threads at Emory Lyda 41, where I go into detail about just how much of a dog the Donovan Smith is and was. So I gotta say, I gotta start with the tenacity of Smitty John's number 7. But no, I think in all seriousness, if we're looking at this all time, you gotta have the arm, the improvisation, and pure natural raw arm talent of Patrick Mahomes. I think I'd honestly throw in the legs if he counts. I would say maybe Xavier Martin or Jet Duffy as well, like just the pure scramble ability. I think from an intangible standpoint, the easy answer is to go with like a guy like Graham Harrell or Cliff Kingsbury. But just to be interesting, I'm gonna say you can bring in a guy like Seth Davey. I think just kind of his calmness that he showed, and I'll add in kind of the mental side, the ability to make reads of Graham Harrell, and let's see what other things. Size, sure, Patrick Mahomes, whatever. Lungs, definitely not Alan Bowman, and accuracy, not Jackson Tyner, but I think I would probably end up going with Graham Harrell for that as well. So probably some mixture of Patrick Mahomes and Graham Harrell with a little bit of Jet Duffy's pure leg talent mixed in, and then just give me Donovan Smith's mentality.
I took this question to mean this year's quarterbacks,
I
and
did
so
too.
I'm not even gonna attempt to look back on Texas Tech history and conjure up something that would be selling short a lot of good Texas Tech quarterbacks. But this year, I think if I could take an attribute from each guy and put it into one quarterback, it would probably be Barron's arm, specifically in regards to his ability to throw out of tough situations, throw on the move, throw the ball with a lot of velocity, throw it into angles. So I'm going to go Barron's arm talent with Tyler Shuck's deep pass, because that somehow seems to be just the magic potion for him, is just throwing a vert or throwing a fade. That's a really good throw for him. And so we got Barron's arm with Shuck's deep pass, and then I'll go Smith's build, both as a runner but also his agility. Like if you could have Baron Morton, with I don't even know how much more Smith weighs than him. It's probably not listed as a lot, but there's got to be at least 20 more pounds on Smith. If you could just like sneak Morton into the end zone, like on a 3-yard draw, while he's also throwing passes like angled around guys. I mean, that's Patrick Mahomes. Like that's literally him. You just completed one of the most generationally talented quarterbacks of all time. And so I'll stick to my recency bias pick, because I can't even, I would need like days to prepare for the ultimate Texas Tech quarterback all time.
Yeah, I agree. Of course, I'm not that you can tell, but I am a little older. And so I will, I'll throw in, and Jet Duffy's a good example, but I'll throw in Zebby Ledridge, his legs. We'll go Zebby's legs. I'll probably go BJ Simmons' toughness. The dude played on a hurt leg for much of the season. Definitely, Smitty John's body. I think we kind of agree with that. Patrick Mahomes, I'm definitely there with the arm strength, and even the intangibles. I'll definitely go with Graham Harrell's, accuracy, and then just ability to read, defenses. So, we're kind of, I think me and Emory are pretty close on that. Since we're using all quarterbacks and not just the current bred that Ryan chose to do. So, hair, I'm going Pat Mahomes. Although Simmons rocked it out back in the day, if you're just going with the hair. And then, you got to go with Cliff's looks if you're just looking for the quarterback face. Although, and he was very accurate and he could read defenses. So I don't want to dismiss him by picking Graham Harrell. It's a very, kind of a 1A, 1-2 or 1A, 1B scenario to a certain extent. But I don't know. Felipe, I hope that's good enough for short notice. But definitely Zebi's legs and Donovan's body, that would be a nightmare, I think. And then just add in the act, that would be nuts. That would just be ridiculous, actually. And then the face of Cliff and the hair of Pat Mahomes, which I guess if you had the face of Cliff and the hair of Pat Mahomes, would it even still be attractive? I don't even know. So I think that is it. I think I rustled some papers earlier for on Kyle's behalf, but I'll do it again one more time. And we're good. Well, guys, man, I appreciate you doing this with me. It's very nice of you. You certainly didn't have to. And as I kind of start this channel and get it going, but it was an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you taking some time out. Thank you for. We had a few technical difficulties, but I'll own that on my end, and we'll go in. But anyway, parting thoughts as we prepare for the Maui Jim Maui Invitational here coming in a few days.
Well, let's get it, man. I mean, I'm excited to see three days of exciting basketball. It's gonna be a fun tournament in general. I think you're gonna see a lot of what Tech can be as a team this year, but at the same time, you have to realize it's early in the season. There's a lot of development. At this point, last season, Tech went into their first game and got beat by Providence in their first tough challenge. And by the end of the year, they were a top 5 team by most metrics. So a lot can change. And so don't use this game as this tournament as the end all be all for the basketball team, but certainly enjoy the tournament. There should be a lot of high level basketball being played. If you're going to Maui, enjoy that too. I wish I was you. Unfortunately, college schedules and whatnot have other ideas. And I'm trying to save my money up to go to Battle for Atlantis, where 2 of my 2 main teams are both going to be there next year. So, got to prioritize that. But it should be a fun tournament. I'm excited for this time of year for basketball, and should be a fun one. Hope Tech can come up with a couple big wins.
Yeah, enjoy the hoops. Tune into a couple of different games outside of Tech throughout this tournament, and you'll enjoy some really good college basketball. So enjoy the hoops, enjoy the upcoming holiday, enjoy the time with friends and family, and just enjoyed this time with you both. Glad to be back again behind a mic with you, Emory. Always a good ride and a good time to stroll down memory lane like this. And obviously a huge thank you to Jeff for having us, and excited to see the channel and the podcast continue to grow.
Yeah, big thank you to Jeff here. I mean, this is the second time I've been on the Matador Tia account on the Taco and Tech podcast. It's been a lot of fun covering basketball. Football was fun as well. That was a fun preview, even if I think I got a few of my game predictions wrong. But certainly, I mean, it's a great channel. And like Ryan mentioned, just enjoy this time of year. Enjoy the family. Enjoy spending time with people that you value. Enjoy Thanksgiving holiday, whether that be eating a lot of good food, possibly receiving gifts, enjoying really cold weather in certain parts of the country, and enjoying good basketball, good football. There's a lot to love around this time of year.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate you guys again. I will actually be in San Diego for the tournament. My son is graduating from the Marines, so I will be with him during that time. So I will not be in Maui, but I'll be probably. I don't even know if I'll be able to watch the game. We'll have to see how the thing goes. But obviously, my son will take precedence over Texas Tech basketball as much as my wife kind of thinks that I put Texas Tech basketball first. My son will definitely come first for that. So, but we'll be watching. I will watch it eventually if I can't watch it live, and we'll see how we did. But peace out, guns up, and thanks for tuning in.